Thanks for stopping by the garage today. We're going to be installing brake kit number 140-18208 on this Dodge Ram 1500 today. Let's talk about the components that come in this front brake kit. We're going to start with our AERO6-DM calipers. These calipers directly mount to the upright or spindle, so there's no bracketry needed. These calipers are in a special new color called Surfer's Paradise Gold with black screen printed logos. We're going to load those calipers with our BPQ compound brake pads, our GTB slotted only rotors, the necessary hardware for mounting the calipers, and we're going to finish it off with our steel braided line kit. So let's go ahead and get started on installing this brake kit. Okay, now that we've got all of the factory brakes disassembled, what we're going to do is clean up our center hub register on the factory hub, any mounting surface that the new rotor is going to install onto, along with the face where the caliper is going to bolt to the spindle. We want all of these to be extra clean so that our rotor and our calipers will mount up properly. We're going to go ahead and mount the rotor onto the hub assembly. What we want to do is make sure that the rotor is going to be fit flush and flat up against the hub face, and then we're going to secure it with 3 lug nuts to keep it in place while we install the caliper. Now that the rotor's been installed, what I like to do is check and make sure that it's rotating freely and so that nothing is dragging or binding up. We've got our AERO6-DM caliper ready for the pads to be installed. We're going to start by taking our brake pad and have the friction side facing where the rotor is going to go. Once the pads are installed, you'll find that there are 2 clips. Once those are in place, we'll have to tap those into place with a punch. Make sure that both of the caliper pins are completely depressed into their gland so that they don't come out. Okay, we've got our rotor assembly mounted onto the hub, and we've got our caliper with brake pads ready to be assembled. At this point, to make it a lot easier, go ahead and turn the wheel full lock to the left. That'll make it a lot easier for you to line the caliper up and get your bolts into the caliper and installed. Now that our caliper is mounted, we're going to go ahead and check that our center line of the caliper is centered over the rotor assembly. So you'll want to look through this parting line of the caliper and then to this side of the brake pad and this side of the brake pad. In this case, we know that we're centered up. And another thing that I'll do at that point is rotate my rotor assembly to make sure that nothing is dragging or hanging up. We're ready to go. So the next step is going to be taking each of the caliper bolts back out one at a time, red Loctiting them, and then torquing them down to 77 foot-pounds. So we'll go ahead and set our 1/2-inch torque wrench to 77 foot-pounds and torque these 2 bolts down. And make sure that everything is still not binding up and nothing's dragging. In this case, we're good. We're ready to go ahead and install our steel braided line kit. So the caliper's inlet is right in the middle of the inboard body. And if you look carefully, there's a decal covering the hole that tells you that it's a 1/8 inch 27 NPT. We're gonna go ahead and take our 45-degree fitting that's gonna go into the caliper and apply our Teflon tape. And we're gonna install it into the inlet of the caliper. So the easiest way to assemble the chassis fitting onto your needed bracket for this application is to do it off of the truck. It's much easier to do it off the truck than trying to do it up there with your hard lines. So go ahead and install your chassis fitting into the bracket and then install your clip just like this. So we're going to take our steel braided line and we're going to screw it onto the chassis fitting side, but we're going to leave it hand tight. Then we're going to take the opposite side and screw it on to our -3 male end, and we're going to tighten that side down. So we're at the part where things get messy. We've got our nice clamp that's holding back our 3/16 hard line. We're going to go ahead and take that off and bring our chassis fitting up to the hard line and get them screwed together. Now we have our hard line attached to our chassis fitting. And remember, we just have our steel braided line going into the chassis fitting loose, but it's still snug enough that nothing's leaking. At this point, you can see that the new bracket lines up with the existing hole that held the factory rubber line. We're going to go ahead and reinsert the same bolt into that location. So now that our bracket is tight onto the chassis of the vehicle, we're going to go ahead and tighten up our hard line and steel braided line. The last thing we're going to do is secure our ABS line to the steel braided line, very similar to how it was on the factory rubber line. Because this truck has aftermarket upper control arms, the customer has already used a zip tie to hold the other side where it was on the factory arm. Okay, we've got our kit installed. The next step that I always like to do is turn the wheel to the left and right to make sure that the line and your ABS sensor hardware and line are not rubbing on anything and that they're free of any suspension or moving components. Also make sure that there's still enough movement in the line so that it doesn't bind up. So at this point, our brake kit has been installed. We now are going to go ahead and bleed the front brake system. Then we're going to install the wheel and tire, then take it out and do a bedding procedure as instructed in your installation sheet. We hope that this install has been helpful. If you have any further questions about this or any other Wilwood components and brake systems, please get a hold of us at 805-388-1188 or get a hold of us off of wilwood.com.